Welcome to Comics in the Making. My name is Ryan Holgerson. I'm the creator of Slackmatic, and joining me, as always, is Levi Erickson, the creator of The Big. Levi, how you doing, man?
I am doing pretty good. What's going on today?
All right, today. So last episode, we talked about your process. And so this episode, we're going to talk about my process.
Yes.
Full disclosure, this is the second time we're recording this. We were going to try and fake it. We're not going to lie to our viewers.
Forgot to wear the same t-shirts.
Yeah, I looked, I was like, I don't know what shirt it was. I think I'm wearing a hat now. I wasn't wearing a hat then. I don't care. It's all right, guys. I think before we got started though, I did want to just say thanks to everyone that's been commenting on the videos. It's been super great seeing what everybody's talking about and responding. For sure, keep that up. For such a small channel like ours starting out, it's great to know that we're not just screaming into a void and we are reaching some people. So I would love to see, especially with these 2 episodes talking about process, I'd love to hear other people's process in the comments. And see how different it is from ours. And then also I'd love to get some comments on future episodes and what you guys are looking for. Me and Levi definitely have a ton of ideas for episodes moving forward. But I would definitely love to hear from you guys and see what you're looking for.
Yeah, without a doubt, 100%. We at time of recording, we are getting close to our milestone of 50 subscribers that we're shooting for by the end of the weekend. So time will tell in the next several hours where we land on that, but we're getting real close, and we appreciate the support and engagement from everybody. So make sure you spread this around. We are trying to give the voice to the indie comics, to the small press creators, and we'll give a nod to what all of our inspirations are and the stuff that you may hear about in some other channels, but we really want to raise and uplift people like us who are just grinding it out.
For sure. I mean, we've got plenty of channels out there that are interviewing big names, those big creators that everybody knows, and they're awesome. And we really want to get to the ones that are in the trenches, trying to make something of themselves. And we want to be that voice. That's who we're interested in. And to be honest, that's what gets me excited about making comics more than the big names.
Yeah. So let's go.
So without further ado, let's get in the process
about my process.
So last episode, Levi walked us through his definitely more of a, I guess I'll say, artisanal.
I rolled out the stone tablet and my iron spike.
Yeah. I used to say analog tools. But I guess
and the log. I rolled out the log too.
Yeah. Hey.
The papyrus.
That's awesome. So I'm much more of a digital artist, though. I work pretty much, I'm gonna say 98% of what I do currently is digital. But where I start when I'm writing a story, I still start on paper. So this is how my scripts look. See if the camera actually show that up. It's pretty faint. But I'm just drawing with a ballpoint pen. This is pretty much my layouts. But they're super rough. And I know I spoke before about how I used to kind of run in to a story and just go stream of consciousness and start with page 1 and we'll just see where it goes. I have a harder time doing that now. But that being said, when I do write in these little notebooks, it is still really stream of consciousness. And I'm just kind of spitting ideas out as I go. And I call them layouts, but they're super rough. In fact, there's panels where I don't even have a character in there. It'll just be a word balloon with whatever they're saying, and I know which character it is, and I'm the only one that really has to look at them. So that's all that really matters.
Yeah. Just enough to get the idea on there. It's for you. It's for your purposes. So if it makes sense to you, then that's all you need. Just keep moving
Yeah,
forward with it.
right. And I try my best not to start page one until I've got that entire story done. Um,
Interesting.
it's I guess it's kind of like a safety net at this point. Um, where I know, okay, I got the hard part done.
Yeah.
And I don't think that gets talked enough about is how the writing really is. That's the hard part.
Oh no,
Um,
100%.
that takes all the brain power. You're dealing with writer's block, writer's flood. Sometimes I have that problem a lot. I have too many ideas. I don't know where to go. It almost paralyzes me as much as a block can.
Yeah.
I almost have to be in a specific state of mind to write. I kind of like to be home alone. I'll put on some like classical music or lo-fi hip hop, something without words.
Yeah.
And I'll put that on. I have a cup of coffee. I'll sit in my recliner and I really just kind of like zone out when
Nice.
I start writing. And if I'm lucky, I'll hit that stride and it just starts pouring out.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen. Um, I mentioned before in your episode about characters and stuff like that, and I've been pretty much working with the same characters for a long time now. They've gone through different iterations, for sure, but at this point, I can kind of drop them into any story, and they'll tell me where where to go,
Right.
and I can just kind of let them go.
Nice.
So once I'm done with that, um, that's when I go to my digital tools. So right now, my I guess daily driver, we would call it, is a Cintiq Pro 24. This is a Wacom device. So it's a pen display where I draw directly on the screen like it's a piece of paper. It's not a computer, so I've got to
Yeah.
plug this in to a computer to use. I think it's important to put that out there. Some people don't realize that, especially
Mhm.
when they look at the price tag and they go, surely there's a computer in here. There's no computer in there. And so I use that and I plug that into my laptop. So the laptop is what's actually running everything.
Yeah.
Uh, I did want to point out though, so I'm essentially using a pro level tool to do my comics. I'm not a professional. Um, and I think if you're interested in getting into digital art, you know, I don't think I would necessarily jump straight to the Wacom Cintiq Pro 24.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a very expensive device. I was in a situation where I could get it. It's kind of a bucket list item for me. Um, it's what I would consider the Cadillac of pen displays. But in no means is it necessary for creating digital art.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Um,
Because
yeah.
I've got a Wacom display tablet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's behind me put away, but here's the box. So
Right.
this was about $300.
Yeah.
New and refurbished can go for about half that.
Right.
So, and plugs into the laptop. Um, and I do finishing digitally, and it's kind of funny because I was gonna say before, like you write on paper and a pad
Yeah.
as school as it gets, even with illustrations. When I sit down to write, I open up a Word document on the computer, and
Right.
like it's a ad hoc word processor, but you know I'm the analog drawing guy, you're the digital drawing guy, but you write analog and at least type on a computer. I thought that was kind of
Yeah. And it's really hard for me to write on a computer. I don't know what it is, but just something about that screen does not uh harvest any creativity in me, I guess. So yeah, no, I have a hard time writing on it.
yeah.
There's just something about, what I think it is the notebook, just a cheap piece of paper with
Mhm.
just a random ballpoint pen, and there's no fear of I'm gonna screw this up. it's just a cheap tool. It's whatever. I'm just going in real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can see I mean, this page two, you know, you might not be able to see, but I've completely X'd out this second page. Like if I finish this comic, that page isn't going to be in there. I just marked it right off, and I just went on.
Yeah.
I don't have to think about it. And for whatever reason, that it's kind of like another safety net for me. It just works. So
Yep.
why mess with it? No, but to your point too about the Wacom one, you know, I definitely would recommend, you know, there's a lot of Wacom competitors now.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think I was thinking about this yesterday. You know, if we went like 15 years ago, I'd say the vast majority of people were probably still cartooning on analog devices. You know, we were starting to see digital come in and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of price prohibitive.
Because you
Once
had to buy the software as well, you know.
right. Oh, yeah, and it was super expensive. I mean, I bought Photoshop in I think 2008 when you could actually still just buy the software, and I think it was like $800 or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had
I bought Illustrator. It was like 1200.
gee,
So you know, love them or hate them with these subscription plans that Adobe has, it does make things a little more accessible to people where it's at least getting that huge chunk into little smaller bits or whatever.
yeah, yeah. You know, in the long run, you're better off if you just make a one-time purchase if it's
Oh
possible.
yeah, for sure.
But you
Yeah,
know, on a day to day, when you have, you know, or month to month, that 30 bucks or whatever this month seems, can seem kind of appealing than dropping that kind of coin all at once.
right.
Because if I had that much money, I'd buy like some vintage skateboard shit or something stupid.
Yeah, right,
You know,
right.
I wouldn't think about important stuff.
Yeah. So
Got $20 I can spend on software this
so
month.
we were showing off like, you know, some pens and stuff last week with you.
Yeah.
Well, with me, I've got one pen. So but I'm changing device, you know, I'm changing brushes within the same device, you know. So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this one pen has thousands of pins in it.
Yep.
Um
There's none of that
but
bullshitting around with like, oh, where's my number two micron? What, I know
yeah,
it was right over here.
right. So uh you know, we were talking about price and everything. That being said, man, drawing on a Wacom Cintiq is the closest thing to paper that you're going to get drawing on a digital device. And I'll be perfectly honest now. I'm to the point where I prefer it.
Yeah.
I'll still draw on paper every once in a while. Um, and I'll catch myself trying to like zoom in and stuff like that. I've got no undo button.
I've done that.
Yeah,
Tried to,
yeah,
shit,
right. Uh, but I love it. And
Now,
let me
is that the pin that came with it, or is that like
yes,
okay?
yeah. And you can get several other ones. This is just the considered the what is it? The Wacom Pro Pen 2. Um, but you can get a slim one. You can get they have one that's more for like 3D sculpting. It's got an extra button
Oh yeah,
on
yeah.
here. So like, you know, there's two buttons here that you can assign. The sculpting one, they have a third one. So I guess that's good for 3D sculpting. And then it's got an eraser
Yep.
here on the bottom. Never use it. Um, I've used the eraser maybe a couple times, and I don't even like flipping the pen around. But the other thing it came with is this Wacom remote.
Okay.
Uh, and so this is my hotkeys for everything.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of people when this came out, who I guess were used to Wacom's other devices, that either had the hotkeys built in, or they were already used to using the keyboard and stuff like that. They hate this thing. I love it. It's magnetic. It fits right on the bezels of the Cintiq,
Oh, cool.
and so it just lives there on the bezel of my Cintiq, and I use it just like hotkeys would, if they were actually built into the device. And then I've got the Cintiq on, it's called the Ergo stand, which is another Wacom device. And I can get the screen into pretty much any position that I want.
Cool.
I can go straight up and down. I can go completely flat if I want. You know, I can do like 45-degree angles.
Yeah.
I can spin it around, which, you know, I think a lot of digital artists, they probably spin the actual page that they're working on digitally, so they're actually not turning anything physically.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I physically turn the screen, so it's just easier for me. I just like, man, I'll just turn the screen.
Yeah.
So
I accidentally turned a page, you know, on my, with my display tablet, and I'm like,
yeah,
what the fuck just happened?
well,
You
yeah,
know?
and
I'm like, how do you get it back? Like,
no,
I turn it like overcompensate the other way, and I was like, shit, what the fuck?
yep, and that's why I don't use it. That's why I don't use it. Like it comes pre-programmed in the remote. It's one of the buttons. It's got like zoom in and zoom out,
Yeah.
which I use all the time. It's got brush size, which I never use. And then it's got the rotate canvas, which I never use. So I'll get more to why I don't use the brush size tool here in a little bit. But so that's the tool that I draw on. But then I need to have software. So the software that I'm using right now is called Clip Studio Paint.
Yep.
Used to be called Manga Studio. In fact, even I think, well, we're on to another iteration of it, but it went from Clip Studio 4 to Manga Studio 5, and then all of a sudden, or Manga Studio 4 to Manga Studio 5, and then I think it got sold or something like that to Clip. And that's when it became that. But it's a software that is made for comics or for making
Right.
manga or whatever. So it's got some great tools in there just for making your frame borders, for splitting up all your tiers on a page. You know, these are things that used to take me 5-10 minutes, maybe more, to rule out a page in
Yep.
real life. This is something that takes me 5 seconds now. And that right there, that's kind of key to why I went from working analog to working digital.
Yeah.
Is it's always about speed for me.
Yep.
How can I get more stuff out there faster? I love working analog. I love seeing those pages build up on my desk and going, this is the project. It's great. It doesn't have the same feel as watching those files build up on your computer, but it just takes so much longer.
Yeah.
And so for me, time was the trade-off for me. And by now, like I said, I prefer drawing digitally than drawing analog.
Yeah. Cool.
So when I go into Clip Studio, they've got a lot of pre-ruled out pages already. And like I said, it's primarily a manga making tool. So the pre-made pages that they have in there are all for the companies that publish manga. So you've got Kodansha, you've got Shueisha, things like that. So these mangaka that are working digitally, they can just go in there and select that one, and they're off to the races. And so I use one that is from Shueisha, which is for Shonen Jump. It's similar to a comic book layout, but it's a little different in a few ways. We're going to do an episode where I teach Levi about manga. So I'm not going to go too far into this, but
yeah. Could you just be
essentially,
like my eyes glazing over or something?
yeah. So
It's
so
not
it's
'cause it's boring, I just don't know.
yeah. So essentially, manga for the most part is printed several different ways. You've got your weekly manga that's going to come out in this big format, which is closer to what we would think of as a just a basic 8.5 by 11 letter page. Everywhere else in the world, I think they call it A4.
Mhm.
And then when they're collected, they come out in these smaller tankobons, which is what pretty much you see when you go to a Barnes and Noble and you see the big rows of manga. But those are different ratios. So the reason I use the manga layout is I primarily put my stuff online,
Right.
and Instagram, which is a big place to post for visuals, they don't like the comic ratio at all. Like you can't just put a comic book page up there. If you do, you have to make it into a square, or you have to cut it up and everything like that. But if I put it in there at the full manga size, it barely cuts anything off. And then when I go to print, then I'm going to cut it off. So you are losing some of that artwork, but I've got a safe area in there where I know all the lettering is going to be safe and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
So always something to keep in mind, you know, when you're creating comics and you're putting them out there, especially if you want other people to read it, you know, what's the format going to be? How's it going to be easiest for people to read it? So that's why I work in there. So once I've got my panels all ruled out, then I go to lettering. So I use a font for lettering right now. The font that I use is Ready for Anything, which is a Blambot font, which is Nate Picos's company.
Yeah.
So Nate Picos, he's a longtime industry letterer. I don't know if he still has fonts come out on a weekly basis, or not weekly, monthly basis. I know there for a while though, it was like every month he'd release a free font and he'd release a paid font.
Huh.
I highly recommend, if you're getting into using a font for lettering, go to Blambot's website, download as many of the free ones as you can.
Okay.
They're great. And then the pay ones are pretty reasonably priced. Another big font site would be Comic Craft.
Yep.
And if you compare the font prices for Comic Craft to Blambot, they are worlds apart.
Wow.
You know, you're probably going to spend 150 bucks for a font at Comic Craft. Whereas Ready for Anything, which is what I use, was a $40 font.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Now I think like if you subscribe to Adobe, you'll get access to fonts from both of them. But
Oh, really?
my guess is that you're getting the free fonts. Like I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know,
I don't know.
I've got some from Blambot and some from Comicraft in my collection, as it were.
Yeah.
So but it's not a whole bunch of them. Definitely
Right.
not like one or two a month worth of
Yeah.
examples from either one. So
Well, if you go to Blambot's website, he's got to have, I don't know, a couple hundred easy
oh yeah.
fonts on there. Again, I highly recommend, if you're looking into getting into a digital font, which a lot of people do, go check out Nate's stuff. It's great.
Cool.
And the Ready for Anything font, like I said, it was about 40 bucks. Highly recommend that one. And what you're getting when you're paying for a font versus some of the free ones, you're going to get some variation in the letters. So it's going to look more like handwriting than with just a regular font that's just like, that's an A, it's always an A, this is a B, it's always that same B. When you're paying for one, you're going to get some little variations.
Well, yeah, cool.
So
yeah, at school they took us through how to make our own font. We had to get
yeah,
we
I've
got a
tried
free font making, we got free access to a font making place. I don't know if it's there anymore. I can't even remember what it was.
Yeah.
And so you'd actually draw them all out and
Right.
fix them in Illustrator and import them into the font maker. What was it called? Font maker. I can't remember. So I still have my stupid font that it's garbage enough
I've
to
tried. I've tried because I like hand lettering.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to just make a font based on mine, but every time I go in there and start doing it, I just get frustrated. There's your Ames guide. I've got a couple around here
I don't
too.
think I've touched that thing since class.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't miss fucking with the names guide at all. So
I mean, it's if I had the time to do it, man, I'd check it out. But we're grinding. We are grinders.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing about using. So I do want to touch on this with the lettering. You know, lettering is like the invisible art when it comes to comics, and it's called that because if you're doing it right, you shouldn't even notice the lettering at all. It should just be perfectly natural. You should be able to read it. Everything's fine. I'm going to quote Brad Geiger, who is one of the co-hosts of Comic Lab, which is a podcast I highly recommend, especially if you're wanting to try and make a living at comics. Highly, highly recommend that podcast. But he always says, no one's going to read your comic if they can't read your comic.
Exactly.
So going back to where I was talking about why I use that Shueisha layout for posting on Instagram, I also keep my font at like a 20-point font, which is pretty big.
Yeah.
But the reason I do that is because you can read it really easily on a phone. And that's how that's how people read now.
And I remember you saying like you try to keep, and I think a lot of people do try to keep the dialogue to just the minimum.
Yeah.
So that allows you to go a little bit bigger on that font if you are being very copious with getting your point across.
Yeah.
With language.
I want to give people as easy of a reading experience as possible. And you'll see a lot on Instagram of people, you know, splitting up their pages into panels so they can do the swipe. So it's easier for people to read. I think that's a good method. I like to vary my panel sizes, and so it's a little harder for me to do that. And so that's why I've gone with a slightly bigger font. So it's right there. It's easy to read. You know, and I think it's important to mention that you kind of have to think about if you're putting stuff out on social media and you want people to read your stuff, you got to think like a muggle. Not everybody is a comic maker out there. So when people are scrolling by, if they have to do extra work to read your comic, guess what? They're not going to read your comic.
Right.
If they can scroll up and they're like, oh, this is easy to read and it caught my eye, that's great. But if they've got to click on there, they've got to pinch in, they've got to scroll over, you know, it's going to be harder for them to read, you know. So that's one of my tips when it comes to posting online. Make it easy.
Or even print, you know.
Don't
make it a turn off. I've gone back to some of my favorite comics in the past, you know, from 30 years ago, whatever. Oh, I'm going to reread the Inferno series. And I end up not reading it because, you know, I don't want to, not to shit on the story or shit on any of that stuff. It's amazing. But it's like, I just don't want to slog through the mud right now, you know?
Yeah. Well, here, I just happen to have this next to me. I've got a 1010 collection.
Nice.
And these are about just a little bigger than like digest size. But if anybody knows anything about European comics, European comics are not printed at this size. European comics are printed at like that A4 size. They're big. And almost all of them, especially 1010, they're all like 4 tiers. So when you're shrinking that lettering down from what used to be this big book down to a little book, it's hard to read. So I rarely read these collections. I've got a bunch of them, but I prefer them in the big size because it's way easier to read.
Yeah. And spotting your letters is as much as part of the composition of the page as anything else. So that's you know, and
so keep in mind, like, so far in my process, I've made a panel and I've put the lettering in there. I haven't drawn anything yet. You know, so I will futz with that lettering forever to make sure it's in the right spot. So after that, though, then I'm going into the penciling stage. And what I use to sketch out pencils, I use a red layout pencil for my foreground stuff, and I use a blue layout pencil for my background stuff.
That's cool. I like that. I like that breakdown of, it's almost like an animator's style, you know.
No, so I got those brushes from Frenden, which is Frenden. A lot of people know Kyle T. Webster. He's the Photoshop brush guru. Frenden is the Clip Studio Paint brush guru. I think you can buy every brush he's done on Clip Studio for I don't know, $15 or something like that. And it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brushes. I haven't gone through all the brushes. I have my favorites and that's what I use. And it's worth so much more than $15. So I highly recommend you go get those.
Make a note on that one too. You
Yep.
viewers at home, make a note.
Um, but that it's kind of what's funny though about this, uh I'm using a digital pencil tool. I still want that sketchy pencil look, and I'm not doing very tight pencils at all, unless I'm doing something like maybe for the first time, or I just want to make sure I've got the detail right. Other than that, like if I'm drawing my main characters who I've been drawing for years, there there might be like a circle and some here's where the eyes go and stuff like that. It's really loose because I want to have as much energy in my inks as possible.
Yes.
So once I've got those pencils down, I create a layer above that.
Yep.
And I drop the opacity of my pencils to about like 40%. It's just a little easier on the eyes, I think, when you're inking. And then again, kind of helps with the keeping that energy in your inks. So the brush I'm using mostly for line work right now it's another Frienden brush. And it's called the natural brush. And that's, I mean, it's kind of what it is. It's like a natural inking brush. So it's about as close to, I guess, a Kolinsky, either Winsor Newton or Raphael brush that you can get. And I did want to point out here. So like, I know how to ink with an actual brush, and I did that for years.
Yeah.
And part of my early reservation of going digital was I had spent so much time learning how to ink with that brush. I was afraid I was going to lose all that time to going digitally,
Yeah.
But they inform each other. And so the skill I learned from varying that line with the brush went over to digital. And so I can get that same line with my digital brush. I'm not sure if I would have gotten to that point without knowing how to do it analog, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. It definitely like it is a jump start. It's like, if you snowboard and you try to surf, and once you get used to the water and all that shit, when you're on your feet, you start to understand. If you're skateboarding and try to do one of those two things, there's some adjustments you're definitely gonna have to make, but there's a foundation of balance that I think is what you're getting at when it comes to informing this action and leading into something that seems different but is the same job.
It's all muscle memory. It's all muscle memory. And I mentioned earlier that I don't change the sizes of my brush. So
yeah,
I thinking behind that is, well, in the real world, you don't change the size of your brush. You have to go get another brush.
right.
Or you have to go get another pen. And I might work digitally, but I don't want it to smack the reader in the face that this is how I'm doing it. And so when I'm using a tool for my line work, it stays at that brush size. And I work within that constraint. If I have to go to a thinner pen, which I do sometimes, I'll use the mapping pen, which comes with Clip Studio. I'll do that more for my cross hatching and the backgrounds and stuff like that. I go to that pen just like I would in the real world, only I'm just hitting a couple buttons
Right.
to get
Nice.
And I think, if I think sometimes changing that brush size and doing stuff like that, when I look at some people that are just starting digital art, sometimes that's where they, I don't know, falter a little bit. They do a little too much,
Yeah.
You still want to have that realism, but once I've got the actual line work and stuff like that done, then I'm going on to coloring. If I'm coloring it. Lately I've been doing a lot of black and white stuff, or even at the most like two-tone sort of stuff. So
yeah, the black and white stuff especially is looking, it's the next level of stuff I've seen from you for sure.
No, I appreciate that. I might be moving away from it. I appreciate it. I know we said this is our process right now, and I can tell you I'm getting antsy with my process. I've been doing it this way for uh probably going on 3 years now.
Yeah.
And so I go through different methods and stuff like that just to keep things fresh. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm messing around with some stuff right now. It might be completely different next week.
Yeah, and even on the analog side of it or traditional side, I will do different methods depending on how the mood strikes me. I'll blue line and then I'll ink the blue line. Sometimes I'll instead of the blue line, I'll light box, really light pencil on, ink the pencil. Sometimes I'll ink directly, on the light box, and forego penciling altogether. It just depends on what mood strikes me and where I feel it's gonna be the most beneficial for the product I'm trying to make, man.
Yeah, no. And I mean, and your hope is that you're creating this stuff for years, if not decades. So you've got to keep stuff fresh.
Yeah, yeah. Fresh for you, fresh for the reader. Just make sure everyone's having a great experience, and keep cranking that stuff out.
Right.
Any last words on your process before we wrap
I don't
this
think
up?
so. I think that that's for right now, that's where I'm at. And like I said, I'm messing around with some stuff. So maybe here in a month, maybe I'll reveal some of the changes. I've been working on an iPad a little bit more than usual.
Okay, like mess around with Procreate or
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yep. So we'll see. That might change some stuff. I don't know.
All right. Hey, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Awesome time. I think that wraps it up. If you don't have anything else to add to this one, we'll
No,
take it
we're
to the
good.
house.
Again, leave comments, like, subscribe, let people know about what we're doing.
Definitely. Hopefully we'll be hitting that 50, that big 50 subscriber milestone this weekend by time of print. So we'll see you guys out there. Take care.
Awesome. Later.